friends from Sport SG. Shall start? Shall begin? Anyone? Your friends still on the way?
Not
Just one moment, sorry. Yeah. So thank you so much, Andrew, for putting this together. Thank you so much, late. Today we would like to welcome two iconic figures in English cricket, former captains of the team as well. And you'll be here to share with us the lessons in leadership at a time when they taught their game, back in the 80s. So you can see that this is a small, cozy group. Keep it informal, keep the questions coming. They're expecting lots of questions from you as well. This is really a rare opportunity for you to get really up close and personal with two legends. Yeah. So let's put our hands together to welcome Chris and David.
Before David comes on, let me just tell you we've known each other for a long time. 70s, you said it. We've known each other for about 50 years. We first played sport against each other. We played in the same team together as we got a little bit older. We've been great friends for a long, long time. And this man here led our country, led England for 32 games over many, many years, and was one of England's greatest ever players. So what he doesn't know about leadership, I don't know what we're going to find out, aren't we? So I'll introduce you now. David's going to start, and then I'm going to follow him, okay? There we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome. First thing I'd like to do, because you've had a very small history of what we are, and I can tell you that that photograph makes us look suitably a little bit younger than we are today. But we go back really to the 1980s in cricket. So I want to ask you all, what sports, I'll go from left to right, there's nothing that is all left, right, it depends on, let's go from this side. What sports do you follow, do you like, do you understand?
Francis, I follow mainly badminton.
Badminton? Okay, good sport. Testing sport?
I cricket, netball.
Very good, my daughter's playing netball. I know most of the rules now.
I'm Joanna. I play softball. Currently playing pickleball and tennis.
Yeah.
Mainly. I don't really follow any sport. Basically, it's just anything that catches my interest. Yeah.
Tennis is my sport nowadays. I've given up trying to play cricket. Tennis is still good. It gives me the satisfaction of hitting winning shots. Unlike paddle, where I'm told you can hit a winning shot, and then someone looks at it and says, no, I can hit that off the backboard. And the game is still live, which I think is cheating. And for you?
And Joyce, I think I follow tennis because of my son. Because he's playing now. Other than that, I run.
Very fit, very fit.
I am one. I play hockey and I try to follow football because of my son.
Well, actually, that helps. That does help. Yeah, hockey, again, was one of my games a long time ago. Great game. So.
Hi, I'm Jin. I follow volleyball and also just the sport as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Remy. I follow athletics.
Yeah. The broad scheme of athletics.
Yes, more of track and field itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so more about the sprint. Any events, there's too many events to watch.
True.
Hi guys, I'm Sharin. I'm in tennis.
Well, again, I love my tennis, so yes, good.
I follow
Football. And it's interesting. Oh, I'm so sorry. Do we have any drugs for this? I mean, legal ones, nothing serious. Just something to make you feel a little better. European Cup.
Yes.
Well, something like that.
Something we can share please.
Well, it's something left to cheer for, yes. Our host, of course.
Yeah, I follow football. I'm a proud Liverpool supporter.
Liverpool, well, he's already celebrating, so thank you. All right, well, I will talk, as Chris says, we'll try and talk about partly our own experiences of leadership, but inevitably that means cricket, that means the cricket team. What we've found over the years is that a lot of the same principles of inspiring people around you apply to each and every different sport. They apply to business, And they actually apply to things as simple as friendships as well, because a lot of it, I think, involves very straightforwardly, very simply, the way you interact with people. Because sports, unless you are a lone wolf, unless you, maybe even the games like, the global games like tennis and golf, you have people around you. No one can play your tennis shot for you, no one can play your golf shot for you, but you have people around you when it comes to support, mental support, physical support, the whole things, and the feeling of participating in something which involves a lot of other people and which inspires a lot of other people. So, for instance, both Chris and I had, I would say, almost identical upbringings. So the genesis of, in our case, sport, is that we had parents who liked sport, schools that liked sport, the opportunity to play sport. And in fact, the opportunity early on, from the age of probably about 8 years old, to be taught by someone whom you looked up to automatically, because they're your inspiration. They were the people who are going to teach you how to play football maybe, rugby maybe, hockey maybe, cricket maybe, tennis, whatever the sports were that were available. And that key age, which I guess in many ways is where some of you are very much involved, that key age all the way through, the message is exactly the same, which is you are responsible for inspiring an individual and a group of individuals to enjoy, because I always think that is the primary thing, to enjoy a sport, to enjoy an activity, to want to get better. And one of the great rules about sports is that for everyone you inspire, for every child, young person, even adult that you draw into a sport, if you can make that sport fun, if you can make that activity fun, and for instance, let me confess, one of the things that apparently professional sportsmen are meant to like and do is something called training. Whether you run, whether you do weights, whatever you do to prepare yourself for your sport, it's called training. I hated training. And yet, some years ago when we started at a slightly elderly age, or more senior age, responsible age, we found a personal trainer who made it fun. And therefore it became an activity that was not just a chore, not just something one was obliged to do. For instance, at school, if you are told you are going to play rugby, cricket, football, whatever it might be, you are going to go on a long run for 3 miles, and you have no option. Unless someone makes that fun for you, unless there's something that suddenly generates a sense of enjoyment from it, you're going to hate that for life. So everything you do as a leader, as a sports teacher, involves working with those individuals, sometimes one-on-one, obviously with a big group. It is somehow how you make it fun, how you make it different, each and every time. One of the big problems with sport, of course, is that there are the basic building blocks of any sport, the basic skills of any sport. Now, for instance, when I was at school, my senior school in Canterbury in Kent in England, apart from playing sports, I did a little bit of music. And I was learning 2 instruments, or trying to. One was the piano, one was the clarinet. And I had a piano teacher who was very much old school. The rules were very simple as far as she was concerned. You learned all the technical bit, all the scales, your fingers had to work in conjunction, you had to work out the scales in exactly the way she taught you, and you had to go away and practice. And that was deadly boring. So did I stay with the piano? Did I? What's the correct word I'm allowed to use? No, I didn't. Just testing with the audience here. So no, I left the piano behind. I can still play one hymn tune I learned when I was 10. That's about it. The other man taught me clarinet. So again, you've got fingers to put in the right place. You've got techniques you have to learn, and how to put your mouth in the right place to make it sound vaguely decent. But at the end of each lesson, he said to me, right, shall we play a tune? Something fun. So I got something out of that half-hour lesson where at the end, for the last 5-10 minutes, I was doing something which maybe I wasn't very good at because I hadn't spent much time with it yet. But that made me want to come back the following week so I could actually learn to play something recognisable and a tune, which is exactly the same in sports. So for instance, as a child playing cricket, I was lucky as was Chris, that we both had a certain amount of natural talent, and the enthusiasm. And parents, his father was quite good as well. He also, in fact, his heritage, dare I say, is better than mine. His father also captained England, rather more often, I have to say. There we go, that's one of those things. They can't do it all, can they? So, but we all get this sort of inheritance from our parents. If you have parents that love sport, you've got a great start. If you have a school and teachers that love sport, then sport becomes part of your life very, very quickly. And so you have that thing, we both had that thing where actually we wanted to play these sports. We wanted to learn about these sports. So we were going to be good students when it came to sport. And all it needed was people with the right attitudes, which I'll try and talk about, to encourage, to teach, to make sure that the progress carried on upwards so we got better and better. And there's that very simple equation I always say to people with any learning process. The better you get, the more fun it will be. The more fun it will be, the more chances you will get better, because you will spend time automatically playing that sport. So for us, we would have played rugby, play hockey? Badly. Don't talk about hockey. But you'd have played different sports, different terms. So throughout the year, you'd be involved in sport, and it'd be automatically getting better. But if you have people who need a bit more than that, then of course you have to work that bit harder to get into their brains, to get into their bodies, to somehow instill that enthusiasm to learn, that enthusiasm to want to get better, and that enthusiasm to want to stay with the sport. So leadership is, in that sort of context, it's about many, many things. But I would suggest that the first imperative thing about being a leader is having confidence in yourself. Because you now have the job, even if you're playing international cricket or a lower level sport, or if you're teaching children, the one thing anyone wants from you is to believe that you know what you're talking about. So as long as you have that ability to exude some sort of confidence, then you've got a chance that they will believe what you tell them. The moment you are indecisive or vague, or if you lack your own interest in that particular topic, as it were, people from any age on, from a very young age, pick up. In a professional sporting environment, people will sense when you're bluffing. And there's a kind of a truism actually, if I talk about elite sport as our example, when Chris and I both played what they call county cricket, so the first level of professional cricket at the age of, say, 18, we would have had captains in those teams in which we played who were experienced, well-known people with a reputation for being a captain. Now, I would guess that we believed those people were God. We believed everything those people told us because we were 18 years old. They might have been hugely old. They might have been 30 years old. But they had experience. They had a track record. They might have won trophies with their teams. For instance, I had a captain when I first played for my first county, which was Leicestershire in the Midlands of England. The man who captained that team was 20 years older. He captained England. He'd beaten Australia in Australia. And if you're familiar with the history of England versus Australia in cricket, you know that beating Australia anywhere, but especially in Australia, counts as something very much to be treasured. So this was a man with a huge reputation. And the fact that when I was, say, 18 years old, he was prepared to pick me to play in his team, that's the first tick. That's the first sign of confidence from him to me. So that's the first one-on-one, as it were. That's the first time someone says, you are good enough to be part of my team, which in itself is a lift. But then me to him, we had what they call a sort of avuncular relationship. So that age gap meant that I trusted him as an uncle. I trusted him as a leader because of his record. And in fact, the interesting thing is that in that same context, around me, in that room of, say, 12 people, that team of 12 people, you look around, and in my case, a lot of them were 30 plus years old. There's a lot of experience there, and a lot of them had seen that the person I thought was God was actually human. And they understood his weaknesses, they understood his foibles, but they all still trusted him implicitly to make the right decisions. And in the end, if you're talking about leadership in a cricket team, in business, wherever it might be, you need that man at the top, as I say, to be confident in his own ability to make those decisions, confident to communicate, because that's the other thing, you've got to communicate those decisions to those around you. And therefore an ability with words. They don't have to be Shakespeare, they don't have to be the most polished words, they don't have to be poetry, but the words that come from me to you, as it were, have to say to you, right, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, you're important, you're important, you're important, everyone's important, and you communicate as best you can, as clearly as you can, what is important to the group to make this session work. If it's a PT class, you explain what you're going to do. If it was a cricket team going out to play a game, you have a sort of a plan. If you have a plan, you have a start. And one of the things that I always found key to that relationship, when I learned later what I had to do, was that if I gave individuals responsibility to be themselves, I felt that worked better. Because I think there are two ways of being a captain and a leader. And despite what I've just said, one way is for the leader to stand in front or sit in front and just say, this is what we're going to do, with no reaction, no interaction. And I think that's the wrong way. I think, yes, you have your piece, you start the discussion, and you say, right, this is what we'd like to do. But then my vital ingredient was this. If you're my team, and just to use the cricket comparison analogy, if you're my team, and there are batsmen, people, and there are bowlers, I want to know from you how you're going to approach your part of that job. So that immediately, if I say to you, right, what's your plan? How are you going to, if you're going to open the batsman to stick to cricket, how are you going to face him over there who's going to try and knock your head off and get you out? And how are you going to, in similar terms to the bowlers, how are we going to destroy the opposition? And my best team meetings, my best committee meetings, were the ones where you start the meeting going and you get feedback straight away. And sometimes if that's going really well, you say, right, okay, enough talking, because you can overdo that pre-planning. Save some energy for the game itself, for the match itself. And I would guess that up to a point that works with any age group. If you are talking, shall we say, to an 8-year-old, I'm guessing a little bit, my teacher training course is still something I'll do next year. If you're going to talk to even a young man, or a young person, or a young adult, or even an experienced player, if you're talking to any of them, and you're just talking, if it's just words, if it's just, that can start to drift. The music in the background comes up, and the mist comes over. The moment you say, what do you think? What do you think? Do you have an idea? I mean, it might be a child of 8, it might be a child of 14. If they suddenly wake up and say, well, who, me? At least they're now involved. And I found that with my cricket team, so most of my players could have been anywhere from, say, 21 years old to 35 years old. And you always know, because you're familiar with the people in that group, you always know the ones who are likely to interact, and the ones who are happy to sit there, happy to listen, happy just to come out tomorrow and play the game. They still have their own ambitions, they still want to do well. Some are naturally more talk than others. So the moment you get them involved is the moment two things happen. One is they realise that you know they're there. Two, it actually starts that thought process, I think. So the thought process of what am I going to do to a lot of people, when you're a kid coming into a team, it's almost as simple as this. You bring your kit in, you find a place in the dressing room, you put your whites on, all the rest of it. When your turn comes, you go and do it. And it's so natural. but it's still lacking something. And one of the things we all know is we learn each and every day. We get better each and every day. We learn something new each and every day. But when you need that instruction, when you need that next bit of advice, when you need that next bit of encouragement, that has to come maybe from someone else. And when it comes from someone else, it comes from the person you trust most. It can be your captain, it can be someone else. So even if you're part of a team, you can also be a leader without being the leader. And although that for me is one of the great things of team sport. One of the great attributes of team sport is that you have that team ethic. So that the 11 of you, whatever it might be, 15 in rugby, the netball team, the tennis squad, the rugby squad, the cricket squad, they live and work and die, breathe together. And at least in a team environment, even if you've had a bad day yourself, even if yourself, you might be disappointed in your own day, you have other people around you to pick you up. But of course, the most important man in that pick-up session, pick-up mode is your leader. Because the reason people captain sides is that they have that ability to inspire, that ability to say to each and every individual, you are exactly right, you're good, you're the best, you're in my team, remember that, even on a bad day. So one of the great things I learned earlier, and for instance, when you're learning how to lead, and you do that almost by osmosis, by just observing. So when you're with good leaders, you see what they do, you see how they make their decisions, you see the confidence with which they say, we're going to do this. But also you learn tricks of that particular trade along the way. Again, which I would suggest apply to pretty much any age group, which is, to use an example, it might be a name that means absolutely nothing to you, but when I first played for England in 1978, it's a long time ago, when I first played for England, the captain of England was a man called Michael Greer. He's written books on captaincy. He was, as luck would have it, a trained psychologist and psychotherapist. So one of his great skills was that he was very good with people, with individuals. And in fact, one of the great accolades that came to Mike was from an Australian, a fellow called Rodney Hobb, who we played against late 70s, early 80s. And Rodney described Mike as the bloke with a degree in people. And it's a hell of a skill, it's a great skill to have. Now, not everyone starts their leadership with the ability to say you've got a degree from Cambridge University in psychotherapy and psychology. But what people can do is they can learn from an early age, and maybe the first time you captain a sport team, whatever the sport might be, you can learn from that experience as to how to bring people to you, how to draw people into your world, and how you work together. So one of Mike's great strengths was that the same thing as I mentioned before. He was very, very good with his decision making, very good at suggesting, and he was good at this, not just suggesting, that he knew about the game. He knew everything about that game. He knew everything about individuals. And this is an era, dare I say it, where if you compare modern day sport, one of these things comes into play from every training session. And people they can sit down, they can look at themselves, they can look at opposition, they can be given so much information which is now so easily transferable off a laptop screen. In those days, there was none. Any tactics, any team talks were done straight out of here. And actually the two people I worked under to start with both had, as it were, photographic memories for people they played with and against. So someone would walk out and tactics would be instantly right. He needs someone there, he needs someone there, we do this, we do that. And it was all up here in one's head. And I thought that, of course, was the most impressive thing ever to listen to. Because not everyone is blessed with that sort of mental ability to retain all those things that nowadays come out of one of these machines. But with Mike, there was that absolute faith that he knew what he was talking about. An absolute faith that, again, you were on his side, therefore you were well placed. But apart from all that, apart from the team talks, apart from watching what he did, one of the things he was also very good at, so for instance, in terms of an England cricket tour, wherever, it could be to Australia, to India, to New Zealand, the West Indies, in the context of that tour, you have a team. But every individual in that team has his own very, very different needs, requirements. Every individual will be a different character. And so what he would do on a regular basis would just have one-to-one talks. It could be in a hotel room, it could be at the field, wherever it's comfortable, relaxed, so that you can be sure that whatever is said between you is personal. It's not for public consumption, it's a chat, so that I know, or that he knows that you're okay, you know that you're okay. It's just a way of making sure that one individual is where he should be, because what is very prevalent in every sport, and again from early days at school all the way through to elite sport, is that people have weaknesses. And because of teams wanting to show strength, there is always going to be someone in that team who might be having what's known as a bit of a bad time. They might be feeling down, and they'll try not to show it. And the hardest thing as a leader, as a coach, as a teacher, is being able to recognize when someone is not at their best. Because as I say, people will hide this. It can be, children do it almost automatically. Adults do it almost slyly because they've learned the skill of hiding their emotions. But the good leaders will somehow find out or recognize the signs. And again, if you do have a degree in psychotherapy, it probably helps. Otherwise, you have to learn through life's experiences. You have to remember your own experience. So you always use your own experiences to try and put those onto others and try and see if you can spot the same weaknesses, strengths, all the good things, all the bad things together. And that takes time and effort. I would confess that during my time, the few years that I was leading the cricket team, there were times where there were what I call successes with people, and times I think, oh, I missed that, didn't spot that, and so disappears off the radar, and you think, oh, where's he gone? So actually, being able to somehow read those people around you is a vital skill. And whatever age group you're working with, we have to recognize one thing above all, which is we're all human. Even the best of sportsmen, you see, this is the great con trick in a way of television and international sport. But if you watch golf, tennis, Formula One, the best football, even including swears, even with swears, and with Liverpool, of course, if you watch the best, there is this assumption that they are infallible. Your expectation watching sport on TV is that they are almost infallible, that it will be the highest level all the time. I spent 30 years talking about cricket in commentary boxes. And one of the first things I wanted to remember when I started that as a former player is that we're all human, therefore we are all fallible. And one of the jobs of those that talk about sport, especially if they've played it to that highest level, in my book, is to remind people watching that these superstars, they might be absolutely brilliant. The best golfers do things which I can hardly believe. The best tennis players do things I can hardly believe. But although they are absolutely brilliant, they have that one thing that all humans have, which is fallibility. We all make mistakes. It's all a question of how many mistakes we make. I remember, actually recently, Roger Federer, who, one of my favourite tennis players of all time, and someone I'm sure you can remember the names. It's not that long ago that dear old Rod stopped playing tennis, but Roger Federer gave a speech at an American university, all dressed up in gowns and all the rest of it. And it was one of those sort of post-celebrations after degree ceremony speeches. And it was brilliant because he pointed out, and I forget the exact figures, but he said of the multiple games of high-level tennis and all those Wimbledons and Australian Opens and US Opens that he won, the number of points, the percentage of points that he won throughout that long and highly distinguished career was about something like 56%, give or take, somewhere within 2 points, 56%. In other words, even the best tennis player, you could argue ever, but Philip Djokovic probably has something to say about that, but one of the best sportsmen in his class of all time was only on top 56% of the time. And I thought that was the most extraordinary statistic I'd ever heard. So it proves that two things. One is it's how you then organise yourself in terms of your individual skills to be making sure that those 56% of points won win you matches, win you tournaments. But it's also being aware, both as an individual and as a coach, that not everything is always going to go 100% right. So once you've established that as an individual and as a captain, you know what you're working with. And your responsibilities as a captain are, as best you can as a leader, to look after the entire group, to be aware of individual strengths and weaknesses. And the job becomes obviously so much easier when things are going well. So I'll give you a couple of examples very quickly, bearing in mind the great man is poised as well. I'll give you a few examples very quickly. In my game, and in my few years of captaincy, there were certain people under my command, so if I can use that word without smiling, if I believe it. But there were certain people I knew could be better, and who'd had, for instance, I played with them. And if I throw names at you, these are names I don't expect you necessarily to recognise or understand, but I'll give you the context. So, for instance, we had a tour to India in 1984-85. Actually, my good friend here, Mr. Cowdery, the Honourable Mr. Cowdery, I surprised him on this tour because we had a bit of a selection issue. One of the first things you have to do, of course, as a captain, is to pick that team, pick that squad. And we had a couple of spare slots. We had one slot left as we picked this team, and I managed to persuade the selectors that my good friend, Mr. Cowdery, was the best man for the job, for many, many good reasons. He wasn't necessarily expecting this. I remember ringing him 10 minutes after we finished this meeting, and I said, "Guess what?" He said, "What?" "We're coming to India." I said, "Well, how did that happen?" I said, "Well, if you can't pick your mates, who can you pick?" Anyway, so we get him on the plane eventually after his flurry of injuries, and he became a focal part of that tour. Now, on that tour, we started with an unusual event, if I can put it this way. The first day we arrive in India, the Prime Minister of that country, Indira Gandhi, is shot dead by her own bodyguards. This is not the usual start to an Indian cricket tour anyway. For 2 weeks, they have a period of national mourning. For 2 weeks, we don't know what's going on. We have to think on our feet. We have to pretend all is well. We have to follow advice. We managed to go to Colombo in Sri Lanka for 10 days just to get some practice. We came back to India after the period of national mourning. We resumed the tour. We had another assassination of a British diplomat, which again threw things into turmoil. So in terms of leading a group, can I say this was not something I was trained for? But this is something, and it's probably not something you need to worry about with 8-year-olds most of the time. Hopefully the school children and this sort of thing won't arise. But these are the times where you have to think on your feet. These are the times where you have to be bigger and better in your own self than maybe you normally were, where you have to say to people, "We're fine here, you take it by you." You have to inspire your people around you to believe that all is well if that's what you want. And that's what we did. We had meetings, things calmed down. We started that series off against India. Still slightly worried about the situation around us, but we came out on top in the end. Now, there are two people on that tour of whose performances I was particularly proud. One is a fellow called Mike Gatting, who is the same sort of age as us, another man who's captain of England, who at that stage in his career had been in and out of teams because he was good enough to be there, but it didn't always go his way. And selection in international teams can be brutal. So if you get dropped, you get dropped, that's it, and you have to wait for your chance again. You had a couple of chances. On my tour, he was the man I thought would be best as my vice captain. So I said, right, Mike, Gary, you can be vice captain, you can bat at 3, and let's see how that you. I mean, just that one act, he's always said, gave him that rise. That sense of responsibility was now enhanced in him. And he had a very, very successful tour. He was very much part of the team effort that helped us win that series in a place where it's hard to win. The other fellow is a younger man. His name is Gower. He was a younger man, and he looked like a child. He always had the one problem he had as an England player, even though he had all the ability, talent, very competitive spirit, was that he looked young. And therefore, previous captains had treated him like a child. And this is where we come back to that thing where you can either tell someone what to do, or you can converse, you can talk. So with Graham, I would just have simple conversations. When it comes to practice, for instance, what do you want to do to make sure you're all right for the game that starts tomorrow in 2 days' time, whatever? And that, to him, made a huge difference. Because for the first time in his professional career, either for his county, which was Lancashire, and certainly for England, someone in charge had treated him like an adult. As if to say, you know, remember the fact he'd been to Durham University, he had a degree, he had plenty of ability to think for himself if he was allowed to think for himself. And so that to him brought him up to a new level. And again, we got results out of him on that tour, where he proved to himself that he was absolutely deserving to be an England cricketer, and he was part of our victory there. And those are two really, I thought, really good examples of people who, just with simple interaction, came from being at a certain level up to another level. And that's the level they wanted to be at, that's the level that made them be better. And you get your own satisfaction from that, and it goes back to that same old thing as I said. The better you get, the more you enjoy it. The more you enjoy it, the better you get. And that applies, as I say, to 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and even people probably in the age of 60 learning to play that horrible game of golf for the first time. So that to me was very much a personal success for me, and very much a personal success for them as well. In terms of, I did make a list of, I promise you, I really should use these notes once in a while, but there were a few things I put down which are the requirements of leadership. Some of them I've already mentioned automatically. Knowledge, people skills, the ability to understand and get on with people. Communication, we talked about, the ability to talk to people in their own language. So you might have to use different words or different ways of speaking to get through to people. Communication. Flexibility, in other words, things will change, plans will change, and you need to be quick enough and adept enough to move with those things that do change. Quick thinking is part of that. Decision making, of course, the more adept you are at making decisions. If you're the one who says, right, we're going to do this, and people believe you, that's fine. If you're the one that says, what should we do now? Which actually is allowed. It is allowed in leadership, because again, if you're going to use people and their skills and their ability, their knowledge to be part of your team, then actually you are allowed to ask people, have you got any good ideas? And the rule is very straightforward. If an idea works, it was always yours. If an idea doesn't work, it was probably someone else's. Then you're in the clear, you're absolutely fine. Remember that better. And all those things are so very, very true. It's meant to be fun. This is something I always come back to with anything that involves motivation, sport, business, you name it. You want people to have a smile on their faces. The moment you see people without that smile, you see long, hang-dog faces, something's going wrong. And they might just be, let's face it, in certain circumstances, not everyone wants to be there. That's fair enough, you can understand that. But if someone wants to be there and wants to be better, you want that smile on their face. It might be an arm around the shoulder, it might be a pat on the back, it might be anything, it might be a well-chosen word. You're going really in. Whatever it takes just to keep that smile on someone's face is very much part of inspiring them to be better and get on with it. There's a great quote I don't want to miss out on. One of the finest ever international cricket captains, unfortunately in Australia, but we have to acknowledge that. A fellow called Richie Benaud, who had a fantastic career as a player, as a captain, and an even more stellar career as a commentator, both in Australia, in England, and around the world. And his saying went like this: he said, captaincy, i.e. leadership, he said, is 10% talent and 90% luck. But don't do it without the 10%. So, again, that comes back to being confident in yourself, learning enough about your own capabilities, learning enough about your own leadership style to be able to say, right, I've got the 10% now. Now the luck, the other 90%, is who you've got to work with. Let's face it, if you've got no talent to work with, it's tough. But if you've got one really talented kid, you make the most of it. If you've got 10 averagely talented kids, you look after them. And even for the one with zero talent, if such a thing exists, you do your best to say to that one who might not be looking forward to this particularly, right, let's just try and make this fun for you. One of the things I've noticed in my cricket team, so I call it my team, the England cricket team recently, is that times change, methods change, attitudes change. So, although I'd always say the bare principles, the basic principles remain very much the same underneath it all. So all the things I've tried to talk about so far. Characters have different ways of doing these things. Now, I had the pleasure of playing with a man called Ian Botham, who was instinctively just brilliant. One of the people that you didn't need to talk to a lot because he had as much self-confidence going as anyone could need. If you ever asked him, had he ever had a moment of self-doubt, he would deny. He'd just say no. I mean, but once you know people intimately, rather, it's a different word, closely, I can tell you that man, however brilliant he was, of course, he had moments of self-doubt. Sometimes you need to pick a moment, even to the greatest player in your team, you say, you did quite well here. And what you quite often find is you don't need a long hour session to get into someone. Sometimes one sentence, one little word says all you need to do. But both of them, despite being one of the most brilliant players that England's cricket team has seen in the last 40 years, his instincts didn't necessarily stretch to leadership because he fell in one thing. He was an inspirational character, yes. He was a brilliant player, yes. If you could do what he could do, he'd be a mighty, mighty good team. But he didn't quite understand that not everyone was built like him. And he had what's known as a bit of a colourful life. If I can say this, he had a thirst. So come the end of a professional cricket day, an international cricket day, he liked to relax. And it involved drinks. And he couldn't understand it when 10 other people didn't just come with him and do the same thing. And that was a weakness. In other words, what he failed to show was the empathy for the very, very different characters around him. Now the comparison is this: we have a man called Stokes, a fellow called Ben Stokes, who's captaining the England side in this current era, who, if you'd met him 10 years ago, you'd have thought, this man will never captain anything. He was talented, but he seemed to have very few skills outside of being able to hit a cricket ball a long way, bowl a cricket ball incredibly fast, and catch anything within 5 meters. But by life and whatever life has thrown at him, and I think this is the most extraordinary transformation I've seen in a person ever, pretty much. He's had a father who died. One of his great friend and mentor was his father, who died a couple of years ago. He's had injuries which he didn't expect to have. He's had more injuries than actually, for a man who's incredibly fit, he should expect to have. So he's had setbacks thrown at him. He's had the most brilliant success to look back on. But at times he's been on the sidelines because of those various factors outside of the game, about which he had no control. But the one thing it has taught him is the empathy for everyone around him. So he didn't expect, or doesn't expect, everyone to be like him. And there are people playing Greek for England in this current era who come from very different backgrounds, as is always the case. Different schools, different parents, different countries, different cultures. And yet he and this fellow called Brendan McCullum, who's currently, they have encouraged a culture which embraces all. And they've managed to create a culture which allows everyone in that group to be themselves, with no fear of what they say or do. There's no hiding away in the back of the room. And although they haven't won everything, they've done things in a way which I think has been very, very satisfactory to the group itself, and in part, or largely, to all those that have seen what's going on. And that is because the captain and the coach have allowed empathy to be their biggest strength. And there's no us and them. There's no talking down from the leadership to the team. It's the team very much, there's a flow of information and discussion between each and every one. And if I was 20 years old, 25 years old now, I would be very happy to be part of that team, because I think that culture would be something I would enjoy. And so you learn, it basically emphasizes the one thing, is you're always learning about people, you're always learning about even the things you think you know about. So your sport, whatever you've done from an early age in your sport, however good you think you are, you're always learning, and a good leader will always acknowledge that. And going back to Richie Bennett, the man with that great quote, the great captain of Australia, as an observer of the game, as a watcher of the game, and you can might expect a man whose cricket was played in the 1960s, possibly to be fit in that era. But each and every generation brought new things. And he was one of these people with the most open of minds. So he opened that mind to new ways of playing. As a commentator, he understood new ways of playing. Therefore, there was never that thing where there was a man talking as if it was 20, 30 years ago. There was a man who might be in age somewhere up here, beyond us young men. But there was a man who followed trends and understood the trends. So I think, and I hope that's given you something to think about. I could go back over the key points just very, very briefly again, but it's knowledge, it's people, it's communication, it's flexibility, it's quick thinking, it's decision making, and fun. And if, as a leader, as a coach, you've got even some of that, if you've got all of it, fantastic. I would say, the people you work with will be the beneficiaries. And it becomes more satisfying, obviously, as a leader, when you see things work. As I said somewhere near the start, it's an easy job when things are going well. It becomes tough when things are going against you. So try and make it go well. But if you have all that stuff together, you have a better chance of going well. So thank you very much indeed for your patience. Thank you, Mr. Absolute joy. Good.
Right.
Hand you over to Julie.
I'm just literally going to say a few words to reinforce a little bit of what David's already said, but also to give you my take on leadership, which is quite similar, but I've got one or two things that might be a little bit different. So my take on leadership, then I'm going to tell you a story which I hope you're going to like. My take on leadership is that there are two types of leader. Okay, there's the one on this side. Maybe could you just come bring your chair forward a little bit? You could be my example here. That's it, that's perfect. This man here is one of the leaders that is meticulous with everything he does. The planning he does before an event. Every single thing. And you, as his team, will all know exactly what he expects of you. He'll spend hours looking at paperwork and planning. Brilliant. And his view is to get to the top. Okay? Then you've got, Tim, do you want to come forward to here? Then you've got the man on the other side here, who's a little bit more like me. Doesn't really plan very well, but he's got real, he just gets it, go, come on, Tim. That's it. He's got everything, he's excitable, he knows inside his head what he wants. Doesn't necessarily bother telling you, because he says, just follow me, we're fine, we're going. Okay, this is Tim. Okay? But this man is different. He's not only got it there, he's telling you everything. He's a bit very different to this man. Okay? And both of them are going to end up winning. They're both going to be right up there at the top. Okay? We'll bring you together a little later on. My story goes back to 1988, which is a long, long time. I was captain of my county, which is in the south side of England, called Kent. I've been captain for about 4 years, and we've done quite well. We were doing all right. And I had 4 very, very big players, world-class players that I captained under my leadership, okay? Now these 4 people, 3 of them retired because they got to an age they had to retire. My 4th best player had to go somewhere else. He was paid, he was bought off us. We had to transfer him to another club. So suddenly, I'm left with a very young team of new players. I had to lead this new team, which I was really excited about. But because I'm like Tim, I didn't really plan how it was going to go. So I said, come on, let's go. And we went out into the field at the beginning of 1988, all excited, all these young players. And our first 3 games we had, we lost so badly, it was embarrassing. We were beaten by 3 teams that we should have possibly beaten ourselves, okay? So we did really, really bad. My attitude to that was, well, we'll just keep going. We'll just go, everything will turn, it'll be fine. But I had a new chairman of the club, a man who ran the whole club, my boss, who rang me up and said, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not happy with this. We've got to do something about it. I said, what do you think? And he said, we'll get everybody in and we'll sit them round in a circle tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I said, look, we can't, we've got a week off. 2 of my players are going down to France tomorrow with their girlfriends. And a couple of them are playing golf. I was going up to London, ring them all, cancel everything they've got. We're going to sort this out. We're going to find out. And this is leadership talent at the very best. We are going to find out what is the problem with you lot. What is the problem? Why are we playing so bad? So he got them all in at 9 o'clock. Everybody very upset because they'd had their 2 days off. Didn't have their 2 days off, so they're very, very upset. So we're sitting in this circle, and he says, right, I'm not prepared to accept that you, great players, really good young players, are playing like this. I want to know what the problem is. And I'm going to go round the room and I'm going to ask you, and if you don't give me an answer, we'll have lunch, then we'll come back again. And then if you don't tell me by 6 o'clock this evening, we'll go home. And we'll start again tomorrow. And we will stay in this room until I get the answers. The only way we improve is to talk about it. So he goes to the first member over there, who's our youngest player. He's only played 3 games. He was new to the club. We've lost every single game. He said, well, I don't know what's wrong. I didn't know what was right before. I've only known these last 3 games. Would you like to make a comment? No, 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 no. Okay, this is fine. We'll just keep going. I could be here all day if you want. And then he got the 5th one along, who was a bit of a... He was always quite outspoken. And he said, yes, I've got a point. Far away. So he said, I've been talking to members of other teams, and when they go away on trips, away matches, every night they get £15 for their meal money to buy their dinner. We only get £10. So he looked at him and I said, fine, okay, thank you very much. Point number 1, thank you. Carried on, got two further down. This guy says, I'm not happy with our practice facilities. So out there you've got that wonderful athletics track, okay? Alongside it, at our ground, we have this beautiful ground. Alongside it was where we practice. But they let it out to schools and charities, and anyone who wants to practices in our facilities. So they've been ruined, destroyed. They're not very good. He said, why can't we practice on our main field? Why can't we use it? Good point, he said. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Boom, boom, boom. Next one goes up. When we're playing badly, which is what we're doing at the moment, where are we getting any help? Where's our help coming from? We don't have a coach. We don't have a big coach, somebody who can watch us, and someone who's played the game before, can understand what's going wrong. He said, well, have you got someone in mind, have you? He said, yes. A fellow called John Inverarity, who's an Australian cricketer, used to play Test cricket for Australia, and a brilliant coach. He said he's retired, he's bound to be available. Okay, anyone else? No? John Inverarity? Wrote his name down, thank you. Got to the last one, he said, well, while we're on about coaches, I'm very upset with the way we have to travel all the way from Kent, which is right down south of England, all the way up to Yorkshire and Lancashire, all these northern counties. At the end of a day's play, we have to jump in our car and drive for 6 hours, and then have to play the next day. Why can't we do what the big clubs, why can't we have a coach? And I don't mean a teacher, I mean a bus. Why can't we all travel as a team? Okay, that's fine. All right, well, we'll have a little break, he said. I'll bring some sandwiches in, and we'll start again in 2 hours. And I want you to sit there, have your sandwiches, and talk to each other about all the issues you just raised. I want you to talk about how we're going to get better as a club. Okay, and I'm going to come back in 2 hours. So he took me off to his office, he picked up his phone, he addressed every single issue, and he came back into the room 2 hours later, and he said, right, you, £15, your meal money every day for the rest of the season. No problem. You, great point about the practice facilities, because that's going to make you better. You've got them. I've spoken to the groundsman. He is going to prepare the perfect facilities for you to practice. No problem. Done. For you, little bit disappointed. John Inverarity in Australia. I woke him up at 1 o'clock in the morning. He wasn't very happy. But he's here Monday week. We've signed him up for 2 months, and he's coming. And as for the bus, I know nothing about the bus or the coaches. We will have one for you on those occasions where you go to Yorkshire, to Lancashire, to Durham. You will have a bus. Okay? Everyone? In 2 hours he did this. Then he said, right, and in return, I want to see every one of you in this room just quietly nodding when I say, no more excuses. Because all you give me all the time are excuses. Right? We've dealt with that now. You're getting paid properly. You've got the best coach in the world coming. You're travelling nicely in your coach, and you've got the practice facilities you want. Where is the problem? And we all looked up at him and said, well, it was a breath of fresh air. All of a sudden, we had no problem. We won our next 6 games. It's the first time our club in over 100 years has ever won more than 4 games on the trot. We won 6 on the trot. The 7th game we played, it rained when we were winning. The 8th game we won. Now, we won 7 games out of 8. We were bottom of the table before this meeting, and we're now top by a record amount of points, for us anyway, that Kent have ever been on top of the table. That was in a period of about 5 weeks. Okay, so all because of that meeting, the things transformed. And I didn't tell you at the start, this is a story of triumph and tribulation. So far, the triumph, in that we've hit the top. We've hit the top of the league here. The tribulation came when, as a result of team effort, as a result of this chairman, I get a phone call from the England selectors to say that I've been appointed the England captain. Which you may say, well, that sounds like a triumph. Well, it wasn't. It was a nice thing to have on the CV, but unfortunately, we had this wonderful wonderful, what's the word I'm looking for? Begins with M, momentum. We had this momentum as a team. Now you people in sport will all know when things are going well and you're winning, it's fantastic. You feel you can beat anybody. We had a poor team, but we reckoned we could win every game. We weren't frightened anymore of anybody. It was fantastic. Unfortunately, I then have to leave my team for 2-3 weeks, something like that. One through playing for England, second through injury. And when I came back, we were still doing okay, but we'd lost our momentum. And on the last day of that summer, we came second by one little point. The closest margin you can possibly come second, which is why it's not a story of great triumph, but it's hopefully you think is a story of some sort of triumph. And what it leads me to, David was talking about communication. Now the whole thing for me, for being a great leader, is to communicate. Now I was over here, don't forget, before that meeting, I was team. I was the one, I wasn't communicating with my team. I was a natural communicator. Once I got out onto the field, and I ran around, I dived the ball, I loved it, well done Ting and all this, fantastic. But I didn't do what this guy did, of getting everybody together and finding out what was the problem. Sorting the problems out, getting the team to start talking. So this man, Mr. Meticulous, he would have done that, but he wouldn't have had the up and at, like he was talking about fun. That's real fun. This is real graft. So can I bring you over here a little bit more? So if we suddenly bring this great thinker, this amazing thinker here to here, and we bring Ting to here, and somehow we bring these two together, we've suddenly got leadership of the highest quality. Planning everything, getting everything right, communicating nicely with the team, and then going out there and giving it everything, and fun, which was his big message. Again, I just think there is so much to be learned from both. And I wish at a younger age, I'd learned a bit more from him, but didn't have so much of him, okay? So that's sort of my message to you is fun, communication. Just remember, communicate with the people you're teaching, communicate with the people you're working with, and you'll be the best. Sorry to move you. You can go back if you like. No problem. So there we are. We want to answer your questions. We've got some questions that we already written down. I don't know whether people want to ask those questions or whether you want to read them out.
I think you addressed it, and thank you both very much for addressed some of them. But let me just take the questions as they came in and readdress parts and then
okay.
Aspects. So, when you were growing up and starting your career, you mentioned David, one person in particular. Did you have any role models who inspired you as a player and then inspired you as a team? So you partially touched on that. It'd be interesting to know who the captain was actually less.
Yes, the role models. And I was lucky because a lot of the stuff I was talking about actually did happen. From my first school, from the age of 8 to 13, the cricket was beautifully organised, as was all the other sport. We had a fellow called Derek Whittam, who was the man in charge of cricket. The skill, actually, the skill is this. There are some young people who need to be told what to do, and they need to have the techniques explained and practiced. Some are quicker learners. If you're going to come to the top level, you're probably a quick learner. And what he allowed me to do was learn quickly, but learn my way. And then the gentle hand of guidance would steer things if you were going slightly off track. And then when I was 13 years old to 17, another fellow, former Kent cricketer, had also the same sort of ability, just to steer gently and allow that talent to do its own thing. So I have gentle guidance, not severe guidance. And one of the things I absolutely hate is authoritarianism. So if someone is telling you what to do all the time, like that, I am going to fight back. So it is the ability, again, to learn what that particular individual, how best to get the best from. So two very good teachers. In terms of idols, people look up to, I can mention a couple of names, but they weren't available. But there were people back in those days. Okay, again, compare nowadays, current era to the 1960s. When I'm growing up as a child, largely in school, but in school holidays, there is television, there is sport on television. It's in black and white. It's one angle. It doesn't. It's a very inferior product to what we have now. But I would watch a fellow called John Edridge, who did what I did as a player, making 310 against New Zealand, thinking that's quite good. And I watched a guy called Graham Pollock, who was South African, who very different sort of player, making 100 after 100. The first time I went to a live international cricket match, test match, I watched this man get 100. I went to another game in South Africa. We toured as schoolboys actually together. We watched one game, the same man got 100. And I played alongside him in the game some years later. Again, he gets 100. That's consistently good. And one thing I say about all these people, they are people that help you along the way. The two names I mentioned, Edridge and Pollock, actually interesting. Both played in very different ways, completely opposite ends of the spectrum. And the way I played was also totally different. So you can aspire to get as many runs, you can aspire to do as well, but you have to do it your own way. So again, as an individual, I always say to people, do it your own way, be yourself, is advice that we've all been given and will continue to give, because you've got to be yourself. You cannot be someone else. And if you're coaching, leading, understand that people need to be the best version of themselves. So you can't change that person. You can just make that person better.
I think the role model question, I don't know who asked the question about role models, but one of you. I think it's a really important one when you're leading and teaching and you're coaching people to actually find out who they really do aspire to be. And it's like your tennis. If somebody says now they want to play like Federer, you know what they're thinking. From my point of view, the role model, I was in a different position probably to almost anyone, to probably 98% of the world, because my father was one of the great players, like David, but he was one of the great players of all time. So you can imagine growing up as a little kid. I was playing cricket when I was about 3 years old. My first bat ready to play at 4. So as a role model, he was obviously my role model, and I went to watch him play when I was only 4 and 5 and 6. So I had cricket in the blood, so it was very different to most people. And then when I started playing, I went into my Kent dressing room. I was just a little kid of 17, 18, whatever it was. And I went into that dressing room and I found a guy changing in the corner there, who's the best, I said earlier, one of the best the world's ever seen, a fellow called Alan Knott, who will mean nothing to you. He was completely mad. He was eccentric in a lovely, lovely way. Brilliant wicketkeeper. Everything was absolutely, wasn't he? I mean, the greatest of all time. And he batted quite well. He was just did everything different because he was a freak. He was a genius. He did everything different to what everyone else did. So as a result, when I went into that dressing room, no one would change next to him, because he was mad, and he had sticky things all over the place, up a little wall, and he was just. And as a result, I was able to sit next to him in that dressing room, as it turned out, for the next 11 years, which was incredible. And he was the biggest role model for me, because every time I felt I'm not playing well here, I wanted to give the game up a couple of times. I don't think I'm having a bad time here. And we didn't have all the coaches. We didn't have this leadership skills then that we're all talking about here. No one was really encouraging me. You had to do it yourself. This fella kept me going all the time, because I thought, if he can still play and enjoy it at his age and the way it's sort of how mad he is and all that, then I can do it. And so anyway, so if you ever get bored or something, look up Alan Knott, Knott, and I think you'll get the flavour of someone who was normal, genius. That was the question? Was it role models?
Role model. Second question. Reflecting on your career, what is the most important lesson about leadership that you would like to pass to our friends here today, either as PE teachers or teacher coaches?
Probably covered, is it? I think one thing I can add probably, the ability to listen, because there's probably an assumption that leadership for many people is largely a one-way street. It's giving. It is that ability to dictate, inspire, and all the rest of it, and just lead. But I think actually the extra dimension, when I was talking about getting people involved in a two-way street in team meetings, is the ability to listen as well. So, for instance, your story about your chairman, he was listening to those various comments, some of which were low grade, as we understand it, but listening, because one of the things, and for instance, I remember as a county captain, we were run by the cricket board, by what they used to call the Teston County Cricket Board. As captains, we'd meet every year to discuss the issues of the game. So this is another dimension of leadership within our sport. I remember going to one meeting, I was captaining my other county, Leicestershire, and the committee and the board members are sat in front of you, like here, and I remember one of them standing up and telling us what their plan was. And there was quite an important issue at stake. I remember standing up saying, excuse me, are we here to discuss this? If you're just going to tell us what to do, we can probably leave now, you can send us a letter. What is the point in us being here if you're not going to listen to us? That's probably why I got sacked. And that ability for authority to listen, I think, is vital. Because the big trap is to think you've learnt it all, you're the expert, no one else knows anything, which is definitely not true. In our sport, you look around any room like the one that Chris was describing, 10, 12, 15, 16 people in that room, underneath it all, even the quiet ones have opinions. And it sometimes takes a bit more to get it out. So the ability to lead, great, but the ability to listen, I think, enhances that ability to lead.
And making people feel important. I mean, yes. I'll give a very quick story. Same time as my friend Alan Knott was playing, our captain then was a fellow who was captain of Pakistan, a fellow called Asif Iqbal. Very experienced cricketer. I guess I was a young kid then. Had a bad run. I didn't do very well for a few weeks. And when you're not doing well, as I said to him a minute ago, who's going to lift you? We didn't have leadership people like this. And I remember one day I was walking across the field there, and during the game, and don't forget, he's the captain of all Pakistan. And he comes past me and he says, what would you do now? What do you reckon I should do? I looked at him. I thought, this great man, this great leader of men, is asking me, who's totally out of form, totally out of my depth. He's asking me, he said, think about it, I'll see you in about 10 minutes' time. Game carries on, boom, 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 boom. And he walks past me again about 10 minutes later, he said, what do you think? I said, I think you should do whatever it was. I think you should do that. That's what I think I'd do. Thanks very much for that. Thank you. Wow, how big did I suddenly feel? That this great man he didn't actually do what I said he should do. He completely ignored it, actually. But the fact is that he was for me, that is leadership, great leadership quality. Lift someone who's a little bit low, someone who needs a bit of help. And all it was, he said, it's one sentence, almost one word. What do you think?
So when I did the same thing to you in India, it wasn't the first time that had happened.
No.
We walked on the field after lunch on the final day of the game in Delhi, going finely balanced. I said, what's we doing? What do you reckon? Spin or seam? He said, definitely seam. Spin it is. and you were right. You were right. Did you feel?
No, I felt very good.
follow-up question for me, and it may be for everybody actually, is when you have young, talented people that you're teaching, how do you, well, firstly, how do you identify those particular talents, and how do you keep nurturing them and once you've spotted their talent, to really bring it out of those young people so they can excel in what they are, the sport that they are expert in, becoming expert in? What do you do? Anybody?
We're keeping quiet. Well, there is a sort of way out of this, which is so often, as with Chris, as with me, father, mother, so your parents, your immediate family, someone's in that family is probably sporty to give you that early stuff. So if you get the benefit of a 3-4-year-old, so I was the same in Dar es Salaam, same first picture, age of 3, bat in hand. Early start is always good. And what happens then, of course, is that child is brought up in sport, and unless there's some complete disconnect, then they will automatically already be interested in sport when they get to school. So the first chance you get to play in a team, that child will probably have an advantage because it's already done a lot of the practice that others might not have done. And sometimes the trick of a coach is to teach life lessons, i.e. you think you're good, but believe it or not, there are other people out there maybe just as good. And you will. One of the great things I was told actually when I first played professionally, first walked into a dressing room like Chris's, sat down whenever there was a space, and one of the grizzled old senior pros said, just remember, there will be more bad days than good, so make the best of the good. And what you need to do, I think, is establish very early on that there will be good and bad days. To make the most of the good days, because we all love the good days, and sometimes the bad days kill us. But if you are killed by the bad day, that's not good news. If you bounce back after a bad day, that's good news. That's where the arms around the shoulders, the carefully chosen words, the reminders of you're still very good, you're still a very good player. And it is, I would say it's fun. I mean, I've done very little pure coaching, but it's like leadership. It's so much easier with a child that's already enthusiastic. So a kid who's already got talent, already got ability, you just want to say, yes, you do, but do this, that, make it even better. Or do this, that, make it even better. And you're encouraging basically what should be a sponge. Someone who wants to learn will learn very, very quickly. The tough thing is people who are more resistant, less keen. And that's where, to be fair and to be brutal, there are times you say, well, this is not going to work. You're never going to be, I'm sorry, Chris. You'll never play for him. Really sorry.
Glad I didn't listen to you.
But I want you to enjoy the game as best you can.
Thank you.
Because we like having you around. You're a good man. You're a really good man.
Thank you.
So stay around, stick around, and just watch the rest. No.
Look and learn.
So this is where the variety is. The skill in coaching is being able to understand the variety and somehow coming up with a solution to the variety that's in front of you. And obviously a lot of those people will do really well for you. And actually I think it applies in reverse. Obviously, as a coach, there will be failures. And so not to get down because one of them has failed you. Because that's going to happen. And even at the highest level, there will be miscommunication, there will be failures. People you just cannot deal with.
But I think you guys are the key to this, because I did a little bit of coaching when I came out of cricket, and I found the lesser player really good to coach because he improved. You could see he or she, in fact the she, very much so, because a lot of the girls, women, ladies, whatever, at a younger age when I was coaching, didn't play a lot of cricket. And so you could see these young girls, not very talented particularly, but wow, you saw them improve. And then you've got, as I said, the variety is when you identify that one that you said, that tennis player, you thought this boy is going to be brilliant. He's gone off to do national service, hasn't he? But you can identify this is the one that could be really good, and that's where you guys again come in really big time. How are you going to coach the really good player to keep him up there? So it's really exciting what everyone does. It's and just got to enjoy it. I think if you enjoy it, they'll enjoy it.
Anybody in the audience just share what your favourite coaching moment has been? Just one thing that sticks in your mind about coaching somebody or in a situation or a game really, touch your heart.
Anybody got a story they want to tell? Any particular one you want one about tennis players? Good. If anyone's got any point, we're happy to finish on that. Or if you've had enough. No?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Coaching those, not really good, but you nurture them. Because I came from a school where we don't have hockey players. And at 17 years old, they started the first time picking up hockey. And after 3 years, you can really see the progress, and they're just as good. And the caliber is just as good as our national players.
Yeah.
And I had episodes where they were asked to go for national trials, or even one of them skipped national trial and invited to be into the team. And I think that's the proudest moment, both for myself and for the students.
Yeah. It's a great thrill, isn't it? Coaching when you see someone improve, and they love it so much. It's a major thing. Well, it's what you guys, you all do.
But of course, the process isn't easy. It wasn't easy.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of sacrifices and a lot of coaxing, a lot of motivating them because they don't believe that
And then
they
you've
can
got,
pay.
and then you've got to coach difficult people like this. People who don't like to be told. You know. But he made it. He was lucky. Anybody else want to say anything, or are you all happy? Or
I do have because while both people were sharing, I was reflecting on my own coaching journey as well. Quite a number of years ago, before I came to PESTA, I was watching an interview with Rafa and the coach who brought Europe in Istanbul. So the story was Liverpool was 3-0 down against AC Milan, right? 3-0 down in the finals of the European. Yeah. So the interviewer asked me, and says, "So what happened in the halftime investment? What do you tell the players, because eventually you want to equalize and you want to win?" So did you really believe, the interviewer asked and said, do you really believe that they can turn it around? And he said, deep inside, it's game over for him, right? Against the AC Milan quality. So deep inside, he actually felt that it's impossible. But what he told the interviewer was, but you have faith. You have faith. You have to make them believe that it can be done, even though deep inside, you think that it can't be. So, it struck me because it happened once to me. But I didn't say it. I was a young coach, I didn't know. And I let my emotions show. It was a final. I was coaching my football team. And we were leading 1-0. And we missed a lot of open goals, open chances. And in the final minute, they considered a stupid critic. And they considered a penalty and the team equalized. And then it went on to extra time. And in the extra time, again, we missed a lot of 1-1 chance. And along the way, I just stopped cheering. I stopped. I was shaking my head. Okay. And eventually, my team lost on penalty. I met my captain of the team just a few years back for dinner. It was about 15 years ago. And my captain asked me, "Coach, why did you give up? Why did you give up on us on the finals?" So it struck me. I wanted to hide somewhere. I was having a dinner with him. Then I asked him, "Why did you say that?" Because he said, during the extra time, I can still remember, we were shaking our head and we stopped cheering for us. Yeah, and we stopped fighting. So it was a very hard lesson for me. As a coach, your players are looking at you. They are looking at you. Right? Whatever body language, whatever emotions that you show, they are taking notice, right? Because at that moment, they need you. They need you. But even though you can say that the team is together, they are good captains, but they, especially our students, they, at that moment, they need an inspiration, and that's you. And if you stop believing and you stop cheering for them, they will stop liking it as well. So that was a very hard lesson for me. Yeah? I wish someone could have told me earlier on, that you guys earlier on today is how we got it. Yeah, but yeah, that was something I want to share, that don't give on your kids. Yeah, even though you know like what kind of sense is fit it, then you just fit. Yeah.
That's a good point. You answered the question. No, it's a great lesson. The thing to add to that, I would suggest, is as a coach, you realise that you are always being watched and looked at and listened to. Yes. And when you stop, there's a vacuum, and suddenly there's silence. But also, one of the things as a coach that you're trying to give to that team is that when things are not quite going right as a team, you have to learn techniques of lifting yourself. So you're captain on the field. So you need a leader on the field as well as the coach off the field. And in cricket it's a bit different because the leader on the field has more to do and more to say. So the same thing applies. And we've been through some tough times, but same thing applies. You have to have that expression on your face that suggests, even though the figures show you're doing very badly, that there's still a way out of this and a way to come back. Obviously, most of the time it won't happen. But as soon as you drop, captain or coach, then obviously people around you are going to drop as well.
That's good story.
Anyway, let's finish on a lovely. It's been lovely to have you here. Thank you very much indeed for listening, taking part. If there's one tiny thing that's worked today, please use it. And we like the story about the hockey, and that's the sort of thing that gives real satisfaction on both sides. And that's your perfect story. You're starting from nothing, getting a lot out of it, because whatever you're doing, playing or coaching, you want to be getting satisfaction from it. So the better you can be at either, the more satisfying it is. And we really must learn to speak in public. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. All good luck. Some of it will help. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure you guys, some of you may have questions for Chris and David. Feel free to stay back. Maybe take a photo together.
Yeah, sure.